Hello, in this video we'll explore the security of minimal APIs in .NET 10. Now, there is a video already on the .NET 10 minimal APIs, so we are exploring validation of the data provided and all those things, but in this case, we are essentially building on a very similar project. If you want to learn more specifically about minimal APIs in .NET 10 or versions below that, you can take a look at that video. But in this case, we are kind of focusing on the security, and specifically we are focusing on JWT tokens and how those authorization parts, as you have in normal controllers, may affect or may influence in some ways the minimal APIs. There's not going to be too much going on here, but there are some differences, and we will kind of try to explore how you can test them and how you can interact them. This example will be available on Patreon, so let's get started with that and let's take a look. Now, as usual with minimal APIs, everything is in the same sort of an arrangement as any injections and dependencies would be declared in the program.cs. It's all in the one file. And do watch the previous videos in this series for minimal APIs and read the articles related to that in terms of the use cases and all those things. But as far as the security goes, it's kind of similar. In this case, we have a bit of a project going on here. We have app settings somewhere. We get JWT settings, and then it doesn't really matter that we get JWT settings. What we do get is a secret. The secret will be used for the JWT token, which will be used as a bearer token to authorize any requests. Now, we can generate it and we can extract it. We will get into a bit more detailed security throughout this video. It's kind of not necessarily related to the minimal APIs. Any API might be able to use that, should be perfectly able to use that, but this is just to kind of compare controllers versus minimal APIs and how the security functions in both those arrangements. So for this example, we have all this setup as we would do in any normal API, and there is a separate video for that. You can watch a video about JWT arrangements. In this case, we encode as ASCII. In other videos, we do other arrangements. We do have UTF-8, and in general, we still use the same .NET arrangement, default arrangement. You might find many libraries out there. However, they are not very useful. They all just use the same algorithm essentially. Well, it may be HMAC 512 or something else, lower ones or the new ones. There is a video again on this channel about one of the new ones that is still embedded in .NET 9. From .NET 9 it is available to .NET 10, of course. So you can use all these algorithms for hashing the passwords essentially. There's nothing more to them. And they will work perfectly fine. But getting back to this example, we have a few injections. We add endpoints API Explorer. This is specifically for the Swagger, for that sort of predefined automatic documentation of your API. Nothing more to it. The same goes for the Add OpenAPI. Same thing again. This has no concern with the authorization. And then DB context, we just add sort of in-memory DB so we can seed the user for availability, and we can use that user and get the token from them and then test all the other endpoints with the same key. Now, the other thing to remember, just like in controllers, if we use controllers, we use program.cs to set up some things for your token, specifically for reading and sort of decoding, decrypting the token, right? You need to be able to verify the token. That's where all the work comes in the program.cs. You usually have a separate service, which we do here as well, to actually create the token. So you create the token and then you decrypt the token. Now, we also use the same key, just like any normal API. There is very little difference in terms of using minimal APIs versus using controllers. In controllers, we add attribute, but in minimal APIs, we add a little extension method. That's the main difference. And now if we go a bit further here, we create a scope for the database just to see the user, nothing too interesting there. And the whole code is available on Patreon, as well as many other code samples from previous video or the series, as well as some free courses for certain tiers. The main thing to remember, we have to add authorization and we have to set up the token properly. So the token was set up, as you saw, with JWT token, bearer token, more importantly, because that's how we use tokens in API. We don't use cookie token arrangements or anything like that. But as far as the whole API arrangement is concerned, we have this route right here. If you watched the previous video, if you're familiar with minimal APIs at all, you'll know this one will not require any authorization. Anyone in the entire world can access it. Now, you can use filters perhaps, that's a topic for the other day, but it has nothing attached to it, so essentially anyone with your routes can access it. Nothing to it at all. However, this one, products, and if you watched the previous video, you'll know the products had no authorization. We just had a sample of minimal APIs. But we now have MapGroup, and we also have RequireAuthorization. So your authorization will come downstream from whatever injection essentially you have, or dependency rather, you have from your JWT token. If your JWT token is valid, you will be able to get the authorization. That's the beauty of it. So minimal APIs, please do watch the previous videos. We do discuss where they are valid, where they are not valid. It's a very important topic as well. But as far as minimizing certain things, perhaps, this certainly helps quite a bit, because anything with require authorization will require authorization. And you can add certain other things to it. You can do a few things to customize, although again, at this point, we get back to the same topic as minimal APIs. When do you use them? When do you not use them? The authorization kind of goes in the same way. You can't exactly do it when you have a very, very custom authorization. It will be very difficult to override if possible at all. So you have to do it on a minimal API scale, which we talked about in a previous video. If you have just a few endpoints, perhaps on your Blazor server application, that's where you use it. You don't use it, most likely, at least, you don't use it on those complex APIs, on standalone APIs. You just do it on where you need a couple of routes, a couple of endpoints. Well, that's all you need. Minimal APIs come into play, and then you can attach your require authorization as well. And that's the best way to use them. Now, you can, of course, extend, as we talked in the previous video. You can extend them. You can add a class. But that just creates more work, and at that point is probably a bit easier to use the controllers. Other than that, you can extend these authorization arrangements, but you can't do too much to it, really. And jumping just a tiny bit forward, just to make this very quick and simple, and quite straightforward as well, the way you can extend them is you add a little policy. So now you have policy, require role, user admin. If you ever used the controllers in C#.NET, which most people have, if you are looking at this video, you probably have used them. If you haven't, I would encourage you to try them just to compare, because it's very important to know the differences between these two arrangements. But as you can see, this would be just like a role attribute above your controllers method, your action method, right? You have user, admin, user role, specifically admin. So in that case, it would be role admin, but essentially this would be admin role, user role admin. Very simple arrangement, but you can add these policies. But again, you add a few of these, you add a few attributes. Well, these would be extension methods essentially, but they would still be like attributes, and at that point your code becomes massive. Now this code sample is available on Patreon if you want to use it, if you want to interact with it. If you just want to learn about minimal APIs, again, get back to the previous videos and go to the Patreon of this channel and take a look at that sample. It will be easier to read, and there are more sort of arrangements in terms of where you can move all those methods, because in this case they are all in program.cs, so that's not really gonna work even with minimal APIs. You can kind of separate them around, but at some point it becomes not so minimal, and in fact it becomes more massive than controllers. So you have to control that really carefully. But in this case, again, if you just have a couple API points exposed, maybe you have a Blazor server application, you need to expose something, you already have that JWT token going on with some local storage and user state arrangement, perfectly fine. Use this arrangement, use different roles. Maybe you want to expose some admin stuff for your Blazor application, or maybe you want to expose some admin stuff for your API and you don't want to use another controller. Perhaps that would be something that works, but it is something to consider whether it's actually worth to add additional stuff in this program.cs or however else you would extract it versus just using simple controllers. And of course, something else to mention just very quickly, you can use, again, producers for one and authorize, but we already covered that in previous video. But in general, the main thing to consider is your API really minimal? If it is minimal, use minimal APIs with minimal API authorization. If you have at least 10 different routes and you, especially in this case, if you have separate roles, probably at that point it's better to just go with controllers. You have full clear separation of files, because by the time you separate this clearly in different files, you'll have a complete mess on your hands. And with that said, we will conclude this video.